On the morning of my 48th birthday, my daughter sat across from me at the kitchen table, looked me dead in the eyes, and said, "Dad, I need you to stop pretending." I didn't know what she meant. Or maybe, somewhere deep down, I did. I had spent the last 3 years telling myself everything was fine, that the divorce was mutual, that I was handling it, that my kids were okay, that I was okay. But the way she looked at me that morning, like she had been carrying something heavy for a very long time, and she was finally ready to put it down, it stopped me cold. That birthday changed everything. And what she told me next, I was not ready to hear. Let me back up. My name is Gary. I'm 48 years old. I live in a suburb of Columbus, Ohio, in a house that used to be full of noise. Kids running, a dog barking, my wife Carol calling out from the kitchen. Now it's just me, and a dog who mostly sleeps. Carol and I split 3 years ago. 18 months of therapy, 2 failed attempts at reconciliation, and then papers. The kind to feel clinical and cold when you sign them, even though the story behind them is anything but. We had been married for 19 years. I was 27 when we got married. Back then, I thought I had it all figured out. I thought love meant showing up, paying the bills, fixing things around the house, being steady. I thought that was enough. But somewhere along the way, I stopped actually being there. You know what I mean? I was physically present, sitting at the dinner table, driving the kids to soccer practice, but emotionally, I had checked out. I was burnt out from my job, a mid-level operations manager at a logistics company. I'd been doing the same thing for 16 years, and I hated it. But I was too scared to leave, too scared to upend the financial stability we had built. So instead of dealing with any of that, I just went numb. Carol used to say I lived behind a wall. I used to tell her she was being dramatic. After the divorce, my daughter Emma, she was 19 at the time, my oldest, moved back in with Carol. My son Danny, who is 16, split time between us, but Emma and I had grown distant. She'd call on holidays, short calls, polite, the kind of calls that hurt more than silence because you can hear all the things that aren't being said. I told myself she was just busy with college. I told myself it was normal for young women to pull away from their fathers. I told myself a lot of things. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was that I knew, on some level, that I was lying to myself, and I kept doing it anyway. The months after the divorce were brutal. I threw myself into routines. Wake up, coffee, work, gym, TV, sleep, repeat. I told everyone I was doing great, told my coworkers I was finally free, laughed it off at happy hours I didn't want to attend. I became very good at performing fine. But at night, especially in those first winter months, I'd lie awake in that too-quiet house, and I'd think about the years I'd lost, not to Carol, to myself, to this version of me that had gotten so afraid of feeling anything real that I just stopped trying. I thought about my dad, who had died 6 years earlier. He was a quiet man, hard man, never said I love you once in my entire childhood. I swore I'd be different, and then I looked back at my life and thought, am I really so different? I started seeing a therapist named Dr. Reyes. She was the one who first used the phrase emotional avoidance. She said it gently, like she was placing something fragile on a table. And I sat there nodding, thinking I understood it, but I didn't. Not yet. What I discovered next took me completely by surprise. Emma called me in February, about 2 months before my birthday. She asked if she could come visit, just the two of us. I said, of course. I cleaned the whole house, bought her favorite snacks, those little peanut butter crackers she used to eat after school. I was nervous. I hadn't felt nervous around my own daughter since she was born, and the nurse handed her to me, and I didn't know what I was doing. She arrived on a Saturday morning. She was quieter than usual. We made small talk over coffee. And then, at some point, she set down her mug and said, "I've been seeing someone, Dad. A therapist. She's been helping me work through some things." I said that was great, that I was proud of her. And she said she thinks it would be good for us to talk, really talk. I felt something shift in my chest, like a gear catching. I said, "Okay." And that was it for that visit. We had a nice afternoon, went for a walk, but it sat with me, that promise of a real conversation. I didn't sleep well for weeks. And then came my birthday. She showed up with a card and a small cake from the bakery downtown. We sat at the kitchen table, the same one Carol and I had picked out at a garage sale years ago, back when we were still the kind of people who went to garage sales together and laughed about it. Emma watched me for a moment. Then she took a breath and said it. "Dad, I need you to stop pretending." I started to say something, some automatic response, and she held up her hand. "Please, just listen." She told me she had been angry at me for years, not because of the divorce, not because I worked too much or wasn't fun enough. She was angry because of one specific night. A night I had buried so deep, I almost convinced myself it hadn't happened the way she remembered it. It was about 8 years ago. She was 13. She had come home from school crying. Something had happened with a group of girls, social cruelty, the kind that cuts deep at that age. She had come to me. She had knocked on my home office door and stood there with her eyes red and her chin trembling. And I had said, "Emma, I'm on a call. Give me 10 minutes. Those 10 minutes never came. I stayed on that call for an hour. By the time I came out, she was in her room with her door closed and her headphones on. I knocked. She said she was fine. I believed her, because I needed her to be fine, because I didn't have the emotional bandwidth to go in there and really hold that moment with her. She went to her mom instead. She told me she'd never fully forgiven me for that, not because of the 10 minutes, but because of what it said, what it confirmed about where I ranked things, about whether she could really come to me when it mattered. I sat there at that kitchen table on my 48th birthday, and I felt something crack open inside me. Not dramatically, not with tears at first, just open. I said, "Emma, I am so sorry." She nodded. Her eyes were wet. She said, "I know, but I needed you to know why I pulled away. I needed you to understand it wasn't about nothing." And then she slid something across the table. A letter. Handwritten. 3 pages. She said her therapist had suggested she write it, everything she'd never been able to say out loud. She said I didn't have to read it right then, but she wanted me to have it. I read that letter that night, alone, at the kitchen table, with the birthday cake sitting half-eaten on the counter. I won't share everything she wrote. Some of it is hers, but I'll tell you this. She wrote that she was proud of me too. She wrote that despite everything, she still wanted a real relationship with her father. She wrote that she wasn't telling me the truth to punish me. She was telling me because she believed I was capable of more. That undid me completely. I called Dr. Reyes the next morning. I told her what had happened. I told her I finally understood what emotional avoidance actually meant, because I had seen the cost of it. I had seen it in my daughter's face, in those careful, polite phone calls, in an 8-year-old wound that had never healed because I hadn't given it the space to. Emma and I have been talking more since then. Real conversations. Awkward sometimes, full of silences we're both learning to sit in rather than fill. Last month, Emma called me just to talk. Not for a holiday, not for a specific reason, just to talk. I almost didn't know what to do with that. I'm still in that house in Columbus, still working the same job, though I've started looking, still seeing Dr. Reyes every other week, still learning how to be present, which sounds like it should be easy and isn't. But here's what I know now
that I didn't know before I turned 48. The people who love us don't always leave because we did something terrible. Sometimes they drift because we weren't there when it counted. And the hardest part, the part nobody tells you, is coming back from that requires you to first admit you were gone. My daughter gave me a gift that birthday. Not the cake, not the card. She gave me the truth. And the truth, even when it hurts, is the only thing that's ever actually helped me grow. I'm still learning, but I'm not pretending anymore.